Hey everybody, welcome back to Race of History. Today we're going to do the Sabaton history for Hill 3234. This is over the Soviet-Afghan War. We did the song yesterday. If you haven't heard it yet, I'll put the link to it somewhere up at the top here. But obviously the song's over the Soviet-Afghan War, and so I'm anxious to hear what they say about it. Like I said, for the song, this is history that's not really that old, which makes it a kind of weirder historical topic to cover. Um, it's much easier to kind of remove all of the ancillary stuff around historical events the longer time has passed between the historical event and whenever you're looking at it. Um, so it's a little more difficult to look at things that have happened more recently. But this is far enough that we have, a good bit of information on it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Sabaton History, Hill 3234.
Very few bands, well, Western bands at least, have written songs that refer to the war between the Soviet Union and the Mujahideen in Afghanistan.
But we did, and our song is Hill 3234.
I'm Indy Nidell.
And this is Joachim from Sabaton.
And this is the last for now, but hopefully the last for good, long-distance episode of Sabaton History. In a few days, yeah, well, we hope so. I will be able to meet with Joachim finally in a few days from when we're filming this, and we'll do the interviews for several songs. I have no idea when I'm going to meet with Per, but he's actually getting back home and hopefully escaping quarantine soon. Right?
He got out of quarantine a few hours ago.
He
actually.
did.
He was cleared by the doctors.
Gosh, poor guy. I mean, he's tested twice in the last week,
Yeah.
He said, I wrote to him on Facebook yesterday, and he wrote me back, and he said, I'm in complete lockdown, I'm in quarantine, and I have water, and this is my food. And he sends a picture, and it's one piece of, dark bread and a hard-boiled egg.
That one. He was not happy.
Yeah, poor Per. Well, all right, Hill 3234. (1987). The Soviet engagement in Afghanistan was coming to an end. Since the coup at Tajbek Palace back in 1979, they had been keeping the pro-Soviet government of the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan in control of the country. The Soviet army had never planned for a long-term occupation. They just wanted to beat the Afghan insurgents into submission until the DRA could stand on its own 2 feet. Neither had happened. The Soviets could only win short-term tactical victories. They could beat the rebels, they could kill them in the open, but they could not keep them from becoming rebels in the first place. More and more money, men, and material disappeared into the quagmire.
It's hard, and we talked about this with the Napoleonic Wars whenever we did that series, which, by the way, I just saw a thing yesterday. Oh, what channel is that? The channel that did the Napoleon series that we covered. Is it Epic History? I think that's what it is, but if it's not, don't kill me for that. God, I can always see their logo in my brain and can never remember the channel name. Epic History is coming to mind, but that might not be it. They just put out a thing yesterday that said that, or day before yesterday, that said that they were going to do more Napoleonic stuff. So I'm excited about that. But we covered in the Napoleonic Wars, especially with Spain, guerrilla wars are hard to fight for conventional armies. It's just not, you're not fighting the same thing. And so if your army is built for conventional warfare, it may be able to do really well against conventional armies. But against non-conventional forces, it's just not made to do that. Right? So you have these rebel forces, they intermingle and intermix within the population. It's very hard to decipher who is good and bad. Even if they're quote unquote good, are they passing information or logistics or whatever to the rebels? It's just a very hard type of fight. And that's without major backing, right? And the Mujahideen definitely had major backing from Western powers, specifically the U.S., which, you know, pretty overtly funded and you know, gave weapons and training and all sorts of stuff. So it's just a difficult uphill battle to win this type of war.
But the situation in Afghanistan was unsalvageable. Withdrawal was, in the end, the only sound solution. Afghanistan was far from being a unified nation state. Outside of Kabul and the other big cities, people lived in the old ways. Local feudalistic and Islamic traditions prevailed, and they collided with the autocratic Soviet system. Warlords were united in their hatred of the Soviet occupiers and their sponsored president, Mohammad Najibullah. So for nearly 10 years, the Mujahideen, the Muslim warriors, fought a relentless guerrilla war against that occupation. Led by influential leaders like Jalaluddin Haqqani or Osama bin Laden, the Mujahideen were well organized and moved around the wide mountain ranges of Afghanistan through a large system of caves and hidden trails.
Yeah, speaking of Osama bin Laden, I'm going to put a clip in here, just a news story from the time period that references and talks about Osama bin Laden. Look at the headline. Jeez, what a wild world.
From Pakistan and other sympathetic countries, they were outfitted with AK-47s, Lee Enfield rifles, anti-tank mines, and rocket launchers. But while the Soviets were now set on withdrawing their forces, Mohammad Najibullah was getting nervous about the future of his government. To stay in power, the Afghan president needed a symbolic victory, one that would show the guerrilla forces that he was in control. Now, large parts of Afghanistan were connected by single paths, many of them ancient, which led through the steep-sided mountains, often for dozens of kilometers. One such route, the Satu Kandev Pass, ran from Kabul towards the cities of Gardez and Kos in the province of Paktia. Since 1981, it had been under control of the Mujahideen, so most of Paktia was cut off from ground traffic, and the Soviets had been forced to supply their forces there by air. This was, of course, not only very expensive, but by the late 1980s, the Mujahideen were increasingly equipped with surface-to-air missiles, like the US-made FIM-92 Stinger. A plan was made to wrest control from the Mujahideen. Operation Magistral, or Highway, was to reopen Satu Kandev Pass for traffic once more. On November 19, 1987, Soviet airborne units and special forces were airlifted into the mountains and swept the guerrilla forces from their positions in a well-coordinated attack. Such units had proven particularly effective at fighting in hostile and inhospitable terrain. They adapted quickly, and fighting in Afghanistan favored smaller but well-trained and equipped units, for which the regular motor rifle divisions were unsuited. The men of the 345th Independent Guards Airborne Regiment were ordered to occupy the heights in the southwest of the route, near Sarani. The 345 was a veteran unit. From the very beginning of hostilities, they had been involved in numerous operations, leading raids deep into the countryside. Brought in by gunships, they set out to ambush the Mujahideen supply routes with aggressive and imaginative tactics. Now they were spread out thinly over the mountaintops. The 39 paratroopers of the 9th Company were sent to Hill 3234. This hill, named after its height in meters, which is over 10,000 feet, was a commanding position that must be held if the pass was to be controlled. Most of 345's men at this point were not even 20 years old, but although conscripted from all over the Soviet Union, the paratroopers had undergone special mountain combat training in the Uzbek ASSR. That experience was now crucial in the brutal Afghan winter and the extreme elevation. On the evening of December 31st, under command of Senior Lieutenant Sergei Tkachyov, the 9th Company established camp on Hill 3234. Already, though, Mujahideen who had crossed the border to Pakistan were re-infiltrating, making their way to the mountain pass. Key to the Soviet defense were two things: the radio control station that kept contact with the Soviet artillery, and the 12.7 millimeter NSV heavy machine gun on the highest point of the mountain.
Boy, that is a thick bitch. Jeez.
The approaches to the hill were heavily mined, leaving only two routes for reinforcements open. The paratroopers had two PKM light machine guns.
See, this is what I was talking about in the song yesterday, right? So with the PKM, he's in the video, he's holding it by the leg, right? So he's got a hold of the leg, he's holding it out and firing. But when you have the leg, you have a pivot point up at the front that basically allows the gun to just shake its ass all over the place, right? So you you have that pivot point and you have literally zero aim at all, right? So that's why I was saying I feel like it looks cool. That grip up there looks cool. But I feel like unless you were shooting really, really close to you, it would be extremely impractical because of how inaccurate you would be, right? So obviously it's made for you to be sitting or laying on the ground, right? That's why it has the legs and all of that. But if you're going to shoot it while standing up, you want to grip it in some sort of way where you're like pushing the front of the rifle forward towards what you're shooting, right? So like, I don't know, really that's just, when I saw it in the movie clip from the music video, that was just the first thing I thought of, was like, wow, that would be impossible to hit anything. If it's firing automatically, you're holding a leg and it's literally just shaking all over the place. I feel like you would want it, one way or another, you would want it held and pushed forward, and that would be the way you would want to fire it.
A grenade launcher, and a couple rocket launchers. But by the nature of mountain warfare, had only limited fields of fire. Also, the ground was frozen solid, so digging trenches was out. Instead, the men built waist-high walls of loose, dry stone called kladki. These were deemed good enough to withstand the occasional small arms fire and sporadic shelling from the enemy. The Gardez-Kost route was now officially open for traffic for the first time since 1981. For a few days, the paratroopers of 345 were shelled and sniped at on a daily basis, but nothing out of the ordinary. However, on January 7th, Orthodox Christmas Day, the shelling suddenly intensified. A massive artillery barrage rocked the mountain. It was immediately clear that this was not part of the regular harassing attacks. Several hundred mortar rounds and rockets crashed into the Soviet encampment, showering the area with shrapnel and destroying much of the Kladki walls. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the camp was suddenly struck by rocket attacks from three sides. From the south, groups of fighters advanced in the wake. The Mujahideen rushed from cover to cover and got within 200 meters of the outpost before they were spotted. The NSV heavy machine gun opened up at once, tearing into the attackers. The quick-thinking artillery spotter called in artillery support, and it silenced many of the Mujahideen rocket launchers. But that brought only a short respite. At 4:10, another bombardment rained down on the Soviet position. This time, the guerrillas advanced from two directions, the strongest attack from the north. The Soviet commander noticed that this was unusually well coordinated. See, for years, the Mujahideen had relied on hit-and-run tactics, but now they were seen with walkie-talkies, like regular trained soldiers. The rebels waited until the barrage forced the paratroopers to take cover before they attacked, and separate ground groups covered each other with suppressing fire. Bundles of hand grenades bounced against the Kladkis, and many defenders were wounded by shrapnel and stone fragments. The whole mountaintop became engulfed in the chaos of combat as the noise of grenades, gunfire, and exploding mines drowned everything else out. The attacks now concentrated on the 12.7 millimeter gun.
Man, that is a thick boy.
Placed in the center, the gun was able to shoot in all directions.
Was that? I couldn't tell. Was it a swivel at the bottom? Was that gun mounted? I'm just curious whether the shooting in all directions would have been picking it up and moving and shooting in other directions, or if you could just swivel left or right and keep shooting. It would just, in practice, make it a lot more difficult or easy to actually have, fire in multiple directions.
But was also vulnerable to the enemy. Rockets and hand grenades targeted the gun, and some RPGs were fired from such a close range that they bounced off the gun without exploding. Still, the machine gunner held on, firing a continuous stream into the enemy until shrapnel finally cut him and his gun down. 5:35, another attack began. With the heavy machine gun destroyed, the Mujahideen made an all-out attack from 3 directions. Soviet artillery once more crashed into the attackers, but it was now dangerously close to their own position. The guerrillas came close, shouting to the Soviets to surrender. But this was not the kind of war where you'd want to become a prisoner. At 7:10, the situation grew desperate. Casualties were heavy and ammunition was running low. Fighting was so intense that a whole box of ammunition lasted maybe 15 minutes. The men fired their guns at close range. Others were even locked into hand-to-hand combat, fighting with bayonets and knives. Again, the enemy was repulsed. As night began to fall, the paratroopers were down to just a magazine or two, and there were no grenades left. They had radioed to base repeatedly that they were in desperate need of supplies, but High Command responded that it was too dangerous to send in helicopters. The only help in immediate range was the deputy chief of the political department further down in the valley. He had just a few men from maintenance and reconnaissance personnel with him, but he immediately ordered them up the mountain. The column of armored vehicles made its way through the night until the route became impassable and the men dismounted. Burdened with 45 kilos of supplies and ammunition, each man struggled up the hill. They knew that the paratroopers were in a desperate situation and that reaching them was a matter of life and death. The men on the mountaintop had now been under attack for 12 hours, but all through the night the Mujahideen did not let up. The defenders were firing only single shots. There was not enough ammunition left to fire in bursts. Every bullet must count. Meanwhile, the support personnel advanced up the mountain. The approach was so steep that it took them 2.5 hours. In the end, the Mujahideen were unable to break the position. It was close. The arrival of the supply column had saved the day. The intensity of the attack caused a lot of speculation, though. It was the first time in the war the Soviets had encountered such a concentrated and well-executed attack. Some of the paratroopers said they had seen men in black uniforms and turbans. Rumors spoke of Pakistani special forces that supported the rebels and were even airlifted into Afghanistan, but it could never be proven. Of the 39 paratroopers, 6 had been killed and 28 wounded, some seriously. 3 men were awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union, 2 posthumously. The others were awarded the Order of the Red Banner and the Order of the Red Star. It is unknown exactly how many Mujahideen had been killed since they took all their dead and wounded from the battlefield as they retreated, but the Soviets said they numbered over 100. The victory was, however, short-lived. Like all of Operation Magistral, the battle for Hill 32-34 was a tactical success.
Yeah, again, these are just super hard wars to win. Because, yeah, sure, you held off the hill, right? But what happens? The rebels retreat, they regroup, they resupply, and whenever they see an opportunity, they'll be right back out there, hitting either the same place or hitting somewhere else that's strategically important. It's a lot like in the ancient world fighting the steppe tribes. Right? It was really difficult because they could always make you fight on their terms or not fight on their terms, whatever the situation kind of dictated. And it's the same thing here. It's really hard because you're fighting everything sort of on terms that you aren't really comfortable or familiar with.
Sure, and the Gardes Coast route would remain open, but only for a few weeks. After the Soviets withdrew their forces, the Afghan army was unable to hold it. By the end of January 1988, the Mujahideen came back and recaptured the area. It was analogous to the whole war, a short-lived victory that meant little to nothing in the end.
Hold your ground when you fight to those who fight. That is waiting on the hill. No surrender, shoot to kill. You have to hold your ground. Kill the warrior in your sight. That is waiting on the hill. No surrender, shoot to kill.
Joachim, one thing that I noticed from this song, when just after the verse, it goes to a half tempo, right? And I don't remember if it was you or if it was Per, but one of you guys said in one of these that you hate it when songs go to half tempo.
That was Joachim, right? Said that he couldn't stand half-tempo songs.
So I was just thinking, how do you feel about this one? You know?
Well, if I'm honest, it could have been me, but if it was me, I hate when choruses go to half tempo.
Oh.
And because it slows the song down like we did on Night Witches, and I normally
That's
hate
what
that.
it was. It was Night Witches.
Oh yeah, then it was me, sorry. But in this case, it's sort of the pre-chorus, and then it's fine. I'm totally cool with it.
Because then it goes
because
back
gives
up again.
Yeah, you get a snap in the chorus anyway. I mean, I have a really love-hate relationship with this song because I think probably the best drumming in Sabaton history is towards the end of this song. The fill that Hannes performs, when the main riff comes back towards the end, I think that is, how he figured that out in his head and how he performed that. That's beyond incredible, fantastic. But on the other hand, his intro fill, I mean, it's a cut down version of it, but his drum intro was neither me or Peter, the producer at the time, could wrap our heads around it. So it was really weird. I'm not a huge fan of the drum intro. It's nothing bad with it. I'm getting used to it now, but I seriously think the last drum fill he does towards the end of the song is probably the coolest drums we ever had in Sabaton.
Does he know this? Does he know how you feel about this?
At least that I like the last part. Maybe he'll find out about the first part now.
You know, you're gonna get a call from him when this comes out and go, so don't like my drums?
He didn't tell me about that.
You go, no, I love your drums. You don't love them all the time, do you? Well, that'd be funny.
Well, that's actually the constant thing. I mean, I actually enjoy it, the process of recording music. Some people, just want to do their thing, and nobody can touch that. I wouldn't say I like conflict, I don't really, but a bit of friction and difference of opinion is good when writing music, and especially also recording music, because
Definitely in the studio playing around with stuff, and someone says, try this, and you think, that's not, and you're like, hey, who knew?
yeah, you think you got it, and somebody takes that idea and takes it further, Maybe it was started out with a guitar thing, and then somebody grabs a keyboard, or, I really like that. A bit of friction is good, I think.
But speaking of the music and stuff, you and I were talking a while ago, and you were actually talking about the solo of this song. So tell them what you were saying to me.
Yeah, actually, it's a perfect example of how pieces just fall into place sometimes. I remember, I guess this is in late 2015, I think, when I basically had made the pre-production for the song, and I sent it all out to the band, and Tobbe, who was playing guitar at the time, came back I don't know, 5 minutes after I sent the mail, like, oh, cool stuff, can I do the solo? I got an idea. I'm like, yeah, sure. And 45 minutes later, he sends it back with the double harmony part. And normally if somebody comes up with a good idea for a solo, we adapt the song. I mean, this is only a pre-production, so we would change around the chords and everything, but he just nailed it exactly to the chords that were written and everything. So kudos to him to getting that thing just that fast, because when you're a musician, sometimes that's how it is. You might struggle for ages and ages and ages on the simple things sometimes, or a single thing, and then, well, yourself.
Oh yeah.
The next time you're just sitting down and like, where the fuck did that come from, you know?
And the next time I have nothing, I'm gonna call you and I say, listen, I need a keyboard bit for this. I have nothing.
Oh, you will be very, very disappointed. My keyboard skills these days are not that great
But
anymore.
maybe it's
What all instruments does he play? For Joachim, what all does he play? I've heard that he goes in and messes with a lot of different instruments whenever they're getting ready or like brainstorming for a song or new album or whatever. But I'm curious what all instruments he can play.
simplicity I'm looking for.
Oh, then I'm your man.
I see.
Then I'm your man.
There we go. Now the actual subject matter of this song. This is interesting because, like I said at the very beginning, you don't hear a lot of songs about the war between the Soviet Union and the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. I don't know if there's maybe a lot of Russian songs that were written in the Soviet Union back then. Maybe there are, but I mean Western songs. And how did this leap out at you? This particular story?
Well, we were obviously looking for, what do you call it? Well, I guess I could say fantastic stories about last stands. I remember this stuff, you know, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 when this went down. So this conflict is actually one of the earlier ones I remember from the, what do you call it, the news cycle these days. I can't say it's fond memories, obviously, but some of my earlier memories of current events is actually the Soviet-Afghan conflict.
You know, that's interesting because I was a teenager when this happened because I'm a bit older than you, even though I don't look it, I mean, but, you know. But I was a teenager when this happened, and you would think that it would be more on the American news cycles, but it wasn't. We knew that it was there, and you could read about it in Time magazine or in Newsweek magazine, in the serious news magazines, but you didn't see much about it on any late night TV or news cycle. It was more about American stuff because it was a Soviet war, I guess, you know. Okay, well, I'm gonna let you go now, but I'm gonna see you in a few days, and then we'll be
Yes.
live, and we still won't be hugging. We'll be doing finger guns or something, right?
Yes, something like that.
Finger guns.
We should be doing some barbecue as well after the recording.
Absolutely, great idea. Okay, well, we'll put some pictures of that up, right?
Yep.
I'll marinate some meat for a couple days. I'll bring it up. I might bring my little kebab rotisserie. When I had Corona and complete isolation, I ordered a 70 euro rotisserie kebab grill from Germany, and I spent the times that I was able to get out of bed like making like kilos of meat. It's great. I'll bring it. You'll see it next week. Okay, well, for me, Indy Nidell,
And from me, Joachim.
goodbye for this week from Sabaton History Lockdown, hopefully final episode, right?
Yes, final lockdown episode. Let's do this. And see you soon. Back on the road.
All right, so that was Hill 3234, Sabaton History over the Soviet-Afghan War. These episodes are always great. Sabaton does such a good job with this stuff. And I've actually been watching a handful of videos from Time Ghost channel, the Indian Spartacus and all those guys, for the interwar years, I think is what they call it. But I've been watching a bunch of videos on their series, essentially between World War I and World War II, and kind of what was happening in there. They're so good at this stuff. So yeah, I'm really appreciative of all the work they put into it. And then Sabaton is obviously awesome. So all right, well, that's it for today. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I'll put the link to the Discord in the description box down below. And I'll see you all next time.